Everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Envelop podcast. I'm your host, Eugene Crypto MC. We continue to explore what's going on in Web3 space by talking with Web3 professionals who built the space by their minds and their hands. And please welcome my today's over-experienced guest. He's Jamie Bickov-Brett. He's right now from London, England. He's the social entrepreneur. He's Metaverse advisor. He's the workshop facilitator, digital economic justice campaigner. He's also the speaker. Please find his video speech on TEDx of 2015. It's amazing. He had had businesses on his personal story, and it's going to be an amazing episode. You will love it, I promise. So, Jamie, it's a great honor and pleasure to have you on our podcast.
Thank you so much for the invite. And yeah, great to be here and be able to talk about something that's very meaningful and very relevant to the here and now.
I would say you are not 100% Web3 person because your scope is quite wider: mental health, digital inequality, and so on and so forth. So let's start with your story. How did you get into Web3 space, and what have you already done regarding Web3?
Sure. So I wouldn't say it's a traditional pathway into anything technological. So my background is very working class background. I spent a lot of time in my teenage years. I was quite ill. I used to have seizures while I slept, so sometimes up to like 3 times a night, 3 times a week. So quite a difficult time between 15 and 18 from an educational perspective. Really struggled to kind of stay involved with my studies, but had huge health problems. And I came out of that experience without really having any qualifications or anything to my name, and was one day signing on at the job centre and came across an organisation, a charity called the Prince's Trust, and they support young people who face great adversities into employment, education and training. And I went on one of their courses, which was a free course to be able to do, and it was all around kind of confidence building and employability skills. And essentially it changed my life, absolutely turned a lot of what was going on in my world around, and made me kind of realize that actually I had skills, I had something that I wanted to be able to give. I also had a technical ability that lots of people didn't necessarily have, and that came from kind of being in an environment where my dad was a professional hacker growing up, and he used to hack arcade machines for organizations and stuff like that. So really being able to start to look at that, and then for all of my sins, I then went on to work for the Prince's Trust for the next 6 years, supporting young people very similar to myself into employment, education and training. And one of that elements was developing the STEM strategy across the UK, so supporting young people into science, technology, engineering and maths careers. And then I went on to some other roles, did some global roles for a foundation called the Open Society Foundation, and I traveled the world being able to deliver training and supporting kind of C-suite. And then I decided to set my first social enterprise the week before the global pandemic, which is great timing. I've always been one for timing. So literally left my job, was ready to kind of go, and you can imagine at the beginning of the pandemic, the last thing that people were interested in was training. So I was like, right, what can I do so when we do come back to reality, if we come back to reality, what can I do to enhance my training to give it a different offer? And part of that was experimenting with virtual reality, because I wanted to use virtual reality as a tool to enhance people's training experiences, thinking about how we can use all of those different elements to enhance people's learning experiences. So for example, that might be part of the onboarding experience at an organization, or that might be part of being able to understand how different environments work. So I started messing about with that and posting it on LinkedIn, and then it became like its own entity in itself, which is where MetaHub came from. So we started designing virtual reality environments and events, and then that turned into more Metaverse stuff. And then as I got more involved with that space, it turned into really looking at how decentralization could be an economic opportunity for young people. Well, not just young people, but anyone who faces marginalization, or who might not be able to participate in the current centralized structures. How can we use decentralized technology to enhance and enrich their lives and give them the economic opportunity as well?
Amazing. I love the story. 2 questions to fill my curiosity before we dive further. Am I correct that you are personally familiar with the Prince Charles? Yes?
Yeah,
And
yeah, working for them, and then I still volunteer for them as doing mentoring as well.
okay, and the second question is, aren't you going to around to be elected to the British Parliament soon?
There's always that odd question like do you want to help people on a large scale or small scale? Because sometimes that politics bit is an interesting space, and I'm very fortunate that I have had a lot of like opportunities to be involved with like policy and advisement. I've given written and verbal evidence in the House of Commons in the like select committees before, but for me, I think there's much more important to be on the ground, really supporting the people, giving the not ring fencing knowledge, but making sure that those people who need that information can get access to it. So there's a political stance, there's actually an implementation bit of can we prove that we can support those people in the ways that we hope.
Well, let's catch up all your projects and roles. As for me, you have at least 3 businesses, and for roles that exactly clarify us, please. What projects, what roles do you fill now?
Sure. So at the moment, I have 3 businesses. So I still have my training organization, which delivers workshops on thinking preferences and does bespoke training. I also have a MetaHub, which designs virtual reality conferences and events, and we design virtual environments. And then I also have a mental health training organization that focuses on supporting young people's mental health. But the Web3 projects that I'm currently involved in is designing virtual environments. So what we mean by that is being able to go into a metaverse space and experience it within 3D. So at the moment, we're designing a space that's kind of got cinema rooms, we've got auditoriums, and the whole point is to be able to make sure that the space is not just pretty, but it has utility. So we're learning those environments and then starting to sell those environments as NFTs. So somebody could go and purchase a virtual environment and then set it as their own metaverse space to be able to participate in that way. Also a lot around virtual reality onboarding. So how can businesses use virtual reality as a tool to help new hires become indoctrinated to a new organization? So that might be using things like 360-degree video to do a tour of the building, making sure HR presentations are pre-recorded, all of your legal presentations are pre-recorded, everything that we spend a lot of time doing over and over and over again in an organization, we could automate, and also we can give it to people before they come on their first day. So we could pre-board people so they can have an opportunity to do all these things before they've even walked through the door of an organization, really helping people's anxieties, worries, concerns by giving them the tools they need at the very beginning. And then the bigger mission is using Web3 as a tool for social mobility. So looking at how we can work with marginalized groups to make sure that they're getting the information on Web3, because at the moment we quite often design things for those who are already most able to participate. And what we want to do is make sure that we're bringing in people who normally don't necessarily get to participate to be able to benefit from this opportunity as well.
I thought that you told that your first job was in cinema, right? Does it help you to now for conducting events in the metaverse? Because the space in the metaverse looks like a cinema theater, right?
Yeah, there's some elements. I think working at the cinema was I was a projectionist. So actually, what I was working with was technology with 35mm film that was about to go out of fashion. And the machines we were working with that were so old, they had made in West Germany on the side. So there's a far stretch from where it is, but then I was there for the digital transformation of when we started bringing 3D projectors to be able to show films in digital projectors. And I think it definitely helps give you an understanding of designing experiences. That cinema experience is something that we all kind of know and love and we can witness over and over. But I did have to do like 15-hour shifts in a windowless box by myself, which definitely added to some less than helpful moments. Be like, oh my God, I've not seen another person for 15 hours. I haven't talked to anyone. I haven't seen daylight. But it was a really interesting start.
One more point from my side. You are one of the, I would call you marketing extremists, because I haven't seen so much marketing materials regarding around the personal brand like I saw in you. Where did you study marketing?
No study of marketing at all whatsoever. What I'm good with is learning how to automate things. So a lot of the things that I do, I make sure that it's all using tools like Zapier and stuff like that to make sure that I only push it out on one platform and then it gets pushed out onto all the platforms. So it makes me seem like I'm doing a lot more, but a lot of the time it's about how can you make it as efficient as possible.
And you are the tech person. You told about story how you tricked with the teachers in the school. You tried to earn good marks by convincing teachers that they at last year. You told an amazing story in your TED. I will put a link in your TEDx speech. It's amazing to understand your personality and your scopes, your viewpoint. Okay, you are the first person from whom I've learned the term digital inequality. I didn't think about that. How do you define this term, and why are you so concerned about that?
Sure. So digital inequality is really how we refer to the economic and social inequality regards to access of, use of, and the impact of digital technologies. So digital inequality in many senses stems from the fact that our social and economic systems haven't kept up with our technological capabilities. And actually, if you look at where the term metaverse is actually coined from, it's coined from a book called Snow Crash, which is by Neil Stephenson. And really, that book is a critique of end-stage capitalism versus techno-utopian visions. And the reason that that's kind of important is because it really highlights the fact that what we can have in a virtual world is anyone who experiences marginalization already might then feel that that gets enhanced and magnified within virtual spaces. So, for example, if I was looking at digital inequality, I would think about a toll gate and a road with many toll gates on it. And each toll gate is a barrier to participation. So those barriers might be things like access to technology or how the technology stops you being able to participate. And the biggest problem is these roads haven't finished being built yet, and they're getting longer and longer and longer. So those who haven't already had the opportunity to get through the toll gates early on are falling further and further behind, and the gap between those who can and those who can't continues to grow. So every time the power of the web increases and it's possible to do more things online, the gap widens between those who are digitally mobile and those who are not. So that's kind of our digital inequality. And of course, these new forms of inequality can combine with pre-existing inequalities to make them even worse by carrying over the pre-existing differences in human capital into a digital setting.
Well, another great term I've learned from you, it is digital economic justice. And I'm an economist by the background, but I do not understand exactly what do you mean or what is it? Why are you concerned about that?
Sure. So essentially, a lot of what we've been talking about Web3 is and where it's really important from my perspective is technology obviously creates a lot of opportunity, creates a lot of standing where people can benefit from the implementation of new technology. But progress where it's always the same people benefiting and progressing isn't progress at all. And that's my biggest problem when we're looking at digital economic justice is going, well, how are we making sure that everybody is progressing because of this technology? So one of the real big opportunities in Web3, decentralization in the metaverse is the use of technology to remove socio-economic barriers that prevent people from participating. So this might be an attitudinal barrier, this might be a technological barrier, financial, social, enablement, or a policy barrier. And the point of digital economic justice is to ensure that those who already experience less economic opportunities are able to benefit from the inception of this technology rather than facing further marginalization because of it.
Well, we've been in a world of internet only for 30 years. I do remember times where we had no internet at all. 20 years ago, Google had been started also, and Web 1, I don't remember the time, Web 2, and now we are having Web 3. Why Web 3 matters for us all, and what excites you most in this new era of the internet?
So I think the really interesting aspect of Web3, and if you're kind of looking for a place to start with understanding, is decentralization. So what happens if you don't need to have centralized bodies taking a cut of everything that's going on? So a really good example is in 2015, you had things like Uber didn't own any cars, Airbnb didn't own any real estate. If Facebook didn't create any content. They were the platforms. They owned the interface. The property that they owned was the interface, and that's how they made money. Whereas when we look at Web3, the opportunity for you to actually benefit from your production, from your labor, from what you contribute, should be within your hands, because we don't have to go through centralized systems to be able to go and get it. So the reason that I find that really exciting is because a lot of people are marginalized because they can't participate in centralized structures because of whatever biases might be there, or because the opportunities aren't there, or because they're location dependent. Whereas using things like blockchain technology and the whole concept around that means that we could actually enhance the way that people are able to participate within society. So that's the really exciting part, as well as then being able to design things in a very new and innovative way. So a lot of what I do around the metaverse architecture and design is we could design metaverse spaces that are designed with particular neurodivergencies in mind. So let's say we were designing a space and we wanted to be able to look at it from a point of view of a autistic person, and they wanted to be able to have an environment that was less stimulating, less overwhelming. But on the other side of the spectrum, on the ADHD or dyslexic side of the spectrum, we can make it really colorful, really engaging, lots of moving parts to be able to work and create those learning environments tailored towards those individuals. Hopefully, as we move on this technology, what will happen is we will stop designing things for ability and we'll start designing it for preference. So therefore, it doesn't matter whether you have a neurodivergency or not. You should be able to toggle on and toggle off all of the different preference settings you want, because we can all benefit from technology that's been designed with the extremes in mind. So being able to make sure that we can allow more participation through the enhancement of technology is where it's all at, I think, from a Web3 opportunity.
MetaHub, you are the founder and chief metaverse officer there. What is it? How it works? How does it help people to live better?
Sure. So at the moment, that's all around designing virtual environments. So what we do is we create the 3D spaces that people can import into other applications. So the whole point of what we've done is we don't own the technology that we plug it into, but we've made it compatible so it does. So what that can mean is we could be using something like Spatial, which is a fantastic metaverse application. There's a customized environment. You want to be able to deliver a workshop or a session. You want to have a space that reflects that, and we can go and design that space. We're starting to move into then designing the assets within those spaces as well. So whether it's the 3D furniture or anything that you might want to interact with, and being able to include those within what we sell to people, as well as just supporting people with the general understanding of virtual reality. I think there's 3 learning curves we're always taking people on at the moment, which is the first one is clients often come to me and go, we want to do something in the metaverse. I'm like, what do you want to do in the metaverse? And they're like, we don't know what the metaverse is. It's like, well, okay, we've got, let's start with the learning curve of understanding what the metaverse is, how it works. Then you've got the next learning curve of teaching people how to use the technology. So be that for virtual reality space, or be that online, whatever people need to be able to do to access it. And then you've got whatever you actually want to go and teach them. So at the moment, we're really supporting on those first 2 building blocks in order to be able to help on the third one, which is that general education piece. Because we have to remember that the technology that exists in the way that it does at the moment is probably only 6 or 7 months old. And we've had virtual reality for quite a long time, but this convergence of technology now with blockchain, crypto, metaverse, 5G, really makes a huge difference. So it's really supporting us to be able to create this whole infrastructure around Web3 that makes it very different. But that's still very new and very emerging market.
Another great term I've learned from you is inclusive metaverse. I do have ideas. What does it mean? But tell us better, how do you define this term and why it matters?
Sure. So there's different perceptions of what the metaverse can be. You know, Facebook, Meta have their concept of what they consider a metaverse to be. There's a debate whether we have an open metaverse or a closed metaverse. So an open metaverse would be, you know, very interoperable with features with each other, whereas a closed metaverse is more of a centralized metaverse, because the metaverse debatably is Web3 and both not Web3 at the same time. Because we could have a metaverse that isn't based on any Web3 principles at all. So that would be a closed metaverse. But when I'm thinking about an inclusive metaverse, it's a virtual version of our material world with no predetermined physics. It would be community owned, community governed, freely interoperable, and has privacy built in. So that would be my definition of an inclusive metaverse.
Seems to me that you are fundamentally, you try to remove the obstacles of the physical world for everybody by involving all of us in the metaverse. And this will be working, of course, because there's no physical boundaries in the metaverse. Okay, I got you. It's often said that NFTs, or non-fungible tokens, are a sort of building blocks of the Web3 of the metaverse, of course. What are your main thoughts on NFT and its utility? And I do not mean JPEGs, because we didn't understand that this is the first stage of NFT. General, how it will be used in the future.
I mean, NFTs at the end of the day are just autonomous contracts. And I think actually when we look at them from how they're being utilized at the moment from an art perspective, you know, it's a great first block, but actually being able to move our contracts from trust to truth. So for example, in the past, if I uploaded a video to YouTube, who's a centralized database, they own that content because it's on their servers, it belongs to them. They can do whatever they want with it. They could shut down my channel, they could access it, they could profit from it because they own it. When we're looking at, and that takes a trust point to them. So I have to trust them and I have to trust their policies and stuff like that. Whereas an NFT is basically you writing the terms of agreement with the asset that you have. So the reason that that's such an important aspect for the metaverse is it gives you greater control over how what you own, what you've created, what you've contributed benefits you essentially. And that's why it's such an important aspect of Web3. And at the moment, it's used for digital verification of artwork. But in the future, I can't see why any contract, any legal contract, it might be your mortgage, it might be a loan application, might be whatever, wouldn't be a form of an NFT, because ultimately it can execute automatically when the agreements are met, and it doesn't have to rely on trust. It is truth. And that's what the blockchain ledger gives us, is a truth rather than trust.
How do you see the main challenges Web3 has already dropped in our faces and left us alone deal with that? Does it more help, or it sets up new questions we had never had before?
Web3 definitely has some new challenges, and I think it's actually more of a problem with technology in general. So I really like a quote by Edward O. Wilson, which is that we have Paleolithic emotions, medieval institutions, godlike technology. And the problem is, a lot of the time, we haven't really earned the wisdom to wield this godlike technology. And that creates some huge unintended consequences for us. So for example, when we introduced Web 2, and we didn't ever expect that the tools that we utilized in Web 2 or the functionality they gave us would have the ability to erode our trust in democratic institutions and make it more difficult to regulate that technology. That was an unintended consequence of it. And what we often do is, because we're so quick to try and implement the technology and we all want to be the first to be able to do it and to prove that it's possible, we don't actually think about the bigger consequences of the implementation of that technology. And that, once again, is where it's really important for me that we focus on making sure that it's not just the same people benefiting from the implementation of this technology this time around, because those people have already faced further marginalization when it comes to Web 1 and Web 2 implementation, because they didn't have access to the technology or they didn't have access to the internet. And now they've fallen further and further behind and are struggling to kind of get their way on the path. So technology in itself is neither inherently good or bad, but we don't do enough thinking about the wider implementation of these technologies. And that's what I think Web3 is posing us at the moment, is we don't know what the unintended consequences of decentralization is. We've got a lot of theories, we've got a lot of ideas about how it could be beneficial, but we haven't quite figured out the nuance yet. So it'll be interesting to see as it goes along.
How do you see Web3 will inevitably have changed our lives and business in upcoming 5 or 10 years? Give us your vision.
I think the main aspects of Web3 that is going to change in the next 10 years, and we've seen it since really realistically the digital revolution, is that there's a further erosion between our material and virtual world. So quite often a term we utilize is called phygital, which is the blending of our physical and digital worlds. So a great example of our phygital experiences is I know McDonald's have patented some metaverse technology that would allow you to buy your McDonald's in the metaverse, so you never have to take your headset off. You go into your metaverse McDonald's, you purchase what you want to be able to do, and then it arrives at your door. And that's a phygital experience because you've got no separation between your virtual material worlds. They're so impacting of each other and so intersectional that it's hard to distinguish. So we're going to see that happen over the next 10 years. I think the other thing is decentralized institutions. At the moment, you can see that Web3 is mainly kind of hit within the banking sector and the financial sector. But as I was saying earlier with NFTs, those legal contracts mean that the legal sector is probably going to be next on the list. And then I think the next extension of that is how it might impact government and how we run our centralized institutions at the moment, because it will be a case of changing attitudes and seeing if people will adopt if people can put their trust in decentralized institutions rather than centralized ones.
One brief moment I'd love to touch in our discussion is regarding, I would say, age inequality. One of the webinars on YouTube channel you took part recently concerned about how different ages perceive Web3 and the metaverse, and here we have an inequality too. And here there comes the moment of learning, because being on Web3 space requires a lot of learning on an everyday basis. How to combine these two problems together? How would you suggest for different ages to learn Web3? Because this is new reality. We are all facing it. Our grandmothers and our grandchilds are also facing it, how to be there.
So it's a big question. I don't want to be too reductive on it. But this is why I think it's really important that the metaverse is included within the Web3 space, because realistically, and it kind of goes back to your previous question where I was talking about the erosion between our material and virtual worlds, is the closer those worlds and those walls fall apart, the more it should be like acting intuitively rather than acting through a computer system. So computers aren't necessarily inherently intuitive to us. We're looking at a screen, we're using a mouse, we're using a keyboard to do all of our interaction with our digital space. But when we're looking at a virtual space, and if I'm in a metaverse environment, I'm picking up an object very similarly to how I would pick up an object in real life. So if I'm going into a virtual shop, I should be able to go and do my virtual shopping by picking things off the shelf and then interacting with it in a way that I would do with my material world. So when it comes to age, one of the things that I would like to see happen is it would be about building confidence with the technology, but realistically the interface should be much, much easier for people to be able to use. And actually what I find at the moment is probably the opposite happens, is people go into a virtual space and they don't expect it to be more intuitive than their digital computer. So they're struggling to kind of process this more intuitive way of being able to pick up objects and interact in that space. So yeah, it would be interesting to see from an age perspective if we can help people adopt. But at the same time, I've given my 70-year-old nan a virtual reality headset to go around the International Space Station. She absolutely loved it, had the time of her life. So there is that opportunity to support all sorts of segments of society.
Well, let's not forget that in the 20th century we had experienced radio, television, then computers, then internet, and now Web3. So things are moving so fast from one side, but from another side so quickly from a historical perspective. Finally, Jamie, regardless of gender, age, race, country, and so on and so forth, 3 main recommendations regarding Web3 and Metaverse from Jamie Bickerbrad for all our listeners.
Sure. I mean, if I was looking for the places of where to start and to be able to kind of learn these different aspects and the benefit of them, I'd really think about first of all, thinking about the socio-economic implications of these new technologies. It's always the best place to start. It helps you be able to have the conversation. The whole point of technology is it should be removing barriers that stop participation or enable people to enhance their lives. So you've got to understand the wider field around it to really be able to benefit from it. The next one that I would say is if you're looking more at the skill building side of things, 3D modeling, smart contract writing, and graphic design. Those would be the ones that I would say are most impactful because it's a very visual world of Web3. And being able to do 3D models means that you're going to be able to design metaverse assets. So beforehand, you would do web design. Now you design a virtual environment. So that's kind of like what the new evolution of the web is. It's almost it's Web3 kind of promises what Web3 tries to deliver what Web2 promises, which was much more of a way to participate in those 3D cyberspaces and in a way that is meaningful and more visual. I think the smart contract writing is going to be hugely impactful. And then also thinking about phygital. So what does it mean to go through a mixture of a physical and virtual process, and think about the pathways that people do to go, actually, this would be enhanced in a virtual space, but actually this one would be better in a material space, and do that blended approach to reality, really.
Amazing. Jimmy, how to follow you? What's the best way to follow you on the internet or to get in touch with you for your services?
Sure. So my across social media, my tag is at Jamie Beekhoff Brett, all one word. And I'm pretty much on every social platform, as I was saying earlier, doing a lot of posting to one and posting to all. So hopefully I can meet you where you're at. I've also got a website, which is beekhoffbrett.net. Got to have the rhyme in there just to keep people entertained. And then if people want to be able to email me, it's jamie@beekhoffbrett.net. And then we can get in contact and see what we can do. But always happy to have a discussion. And as I said, it's important to not ring fence this information. So if people do have questions or thoughts and stuff, then hit me up, because I'd love to support.
Needless to say that all the links you may find in the description below, and Jimmy is tagged in posts of social media where you found this podcast. Thank you very much, Jamie Beekhoff Brett, the Metaverse advisor, architect, social entrepreneur. Where now was our Envelop podcast episode. My name is Eugene Crypto MC. Thank you for watching and listening. Please like, share, subscribe, and stay tuned with our YouTube channel, because we deliver you unique content by talking with great professionals who are building this space with you by their minds and hands. Thank you very much for watching and listening. Stay tuned, and see you in the next episode of the Envelop podcast. Bye-bye. Blockchain. BLOCK chain. Digital money, smart contracts, NFT, IDO, decentralization, transparency. So many opportunities, but so many challenges. Some financial manipulators, by their actions, confuse blockchain solutions and block their development. The idea that the blockchain should bring copyright and royalties protection to the next level is quite old, but the realizations of these ideas are not perfect at all. There is another problem of determining the value of a particular cryptocurrency or NFT. These and other problems need to be solved. Fortunately, the blockchain infrastructure is evolving. My name is Mr. E, and I represent the Envelop project. Many things have already been invented in the blockchain today. Tokens, smart contracts, platforms for creating your own coins, NFTs, exchanges for buying, selling, and exchanging all these blockchain resources. Envelop is another step in the development of crypto technologies. The protocol that works with NFT and cryptocurrencies. The idea is simple but disruptive. Let's assume you have an NFT, Bitcoin and Ethereum. Using the Envelop protocol, you can wrap the original NFT accompanied with several tokens. Technically, you get a similar NFT, but what is the breakthrough here? Once wrapped, the token has a number of additional features that were not available before. The minimal cost appears. It is provided with coins wrapped together with NFT. An asset wrapped with Envelop has a number of properties that allow the original author to receive royalties from the resale of that asset. Various rules can be applied to the wrapped token. For example, a lock period for unwrapping. It secures the asset till the determined moment, or safeguards it from speculation during the hype period. At the same time, wrapped tokens can be transferred and traded. These are just some of the scenarios for using Envelop. NFTs become more popular, and the tools provided by Envelop expand the opportunities of NFTs utilization. Wide application possibilities are achieved due to the fact that, in addition to the protocol, the project includes a number of subsystems. The protocol provides functions wrapping and unwrapping. Oracle Mechanics provides asset valuation using analytical algorithms. Index provides a summary assessment of several NFT assets with the common criteria. The project has its own token, which connects all elements of the system. Altogether, this is Envelop, a tool in the blockchain world for building modern and secure systems in various fields. Find more info about the project on the website. Envelop. Make your NFT valuable. Just practical, no hype.